Hello, today is Wednesday, March 26th. Welcome to episode 430 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson, and I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellow Jeffrey Wells and NSI Fellow Jessica Jones. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see why Jeffrey is senior and Jones is not. So,
Ouch!
ow!
Ouch!
What? I'm
I resemble that remark.
I'm encouraging people to migrate to the very secure YouTube platform. Okay, folks. So, in case you couldn't tell, we're going to talk about the very amazing news of the Trump administration's national security signal chat group about the strikes on the Houthis in Yemen over the weekend. This is an amazing story. You have probably heard it by now. Essentially, the top policymakers of the Trump administration on national security were in a Signal, which is in a text group on the Signal app that accidentally included a reporter, Jeffrey Goldberg from the Atlantic Monthly. Goldberg has been a critic of the Trump administration, to be sure, and the fact that he was accidentally included in this texting group is an amazing thing. And the text group included a lot of details of these attacks on the Houthis. So we're going to cover a lot of different ground here in the next few minutes. This is truly an incredible story on a lot of different levels. Jeffrey, I want to go to you first. You are the senior fellow here. Please share with us your wisdom about some of the issues we are now confronting.
Wisdom or concerns. There's too much for me to cover here, but one I had to look up. So the law, 18 U.S. Code, I think it's 793F, requires that it's a federal law that requires the handling of defense information. Okay, not classified, but defense information. Says if you're trusted with national defense material and through gross negligence, it lands where it should not, you have to go to prison. That's, and I'd say what happened here is, gross negligence. And it's not like they just left the door open and somebody saw it. I mean, they texted plans, the who, what, where, when, why, maybe not exact coordinates, but that's the debate that's, I think, meant to send us sideways. And they hit send that included on a commercial app on their personal phones, the writer at The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. So that's just not off key. It's just straight up tone deaf national security law negligence. Beyond the law, I'd say it's kind of a Beyonce level betrayal that all these people in this chat swore to protect the Constitution, the troops, the whole deal. And rather than, than doing that, again, using Signal, a group that they should have known who was in the group, they're talking about things, and this is only one of probably that we're aware of, but they're treating OPSEC, operational security, in this group chat like it's Wordle. And they're using emojis and all kinds of other stuff. And then, as they're challenged to it, all this gaslighting that's coming through that's saying, well, no, this is really just thoughtful policy coordination and an effort gone awry. That's like calling the Titanic sinking an unplanned swimming lesson. Or an Elon Musk rocket exploding as an unplanned assembly. This claim that there are no threats to troops is really is about as believable to me as saying, that the Game of Thrones probably has no satisfying final season that is ever going to come. And really, to be completely serious here, though, is for our allies. I have great concern for our national security. Our allies give us a lot of wonderful and important intelligence. And if I was an ally at the moment, I would be looking at us and saying, nope, these are not no longer are we the five eyes, we're the 2.5 brains. Because the intelligence sharing relies on trust. And this breach of trust sends out a signal to all of our allies and our enemies, which I'm not sure if anybody knows who those are anymore, that the U.S. can't even keep a group chat secure. And our adversaries don't need spies anymore, just a misdial. So this is not the end. I'm sure it's going to play out, and the American people deserve better here. People who treat our security like Fort Knox, not like the Wi-Fi at Starbucks. Out.
Jones, Jeffrey on fire today.
That's why he's senior.
And it makes you wonder if the boss of all the people in the Signal chat, except for Goldberg, of course, but all the people who work for the U.S. government, if their boss had a reaction to this news from a couple days ago. What's your take?
Just like Jeffrey, I think when the headlines first started, it was kind of hard to take in because it's so unbelievable of a story. Like it's kind of like when you at work, if you use any kind of app by texting your boss instead of you meant to text your parents, but you text your boss and you're like, oh crap, like this is like the highest fold, like what just happened? And I think what's crazy is you've got some of the most senior people in the land on the thread, minus of course President Trump, who's not on there. Thank goodness. But if you spent time. What I think is really astonishing to me is the reaction from the White House. The first reaction when President Trump was asked about it, he had no clue what was going on, right? Which is alarming that nobody on that chat, all 15, 16, how many senior folks, no one bothered to tell him about this episode and bring it to light, so that when President Trump was asked about it, he went from veering to talking about how his team is great communicators and great texters to saying that he basically Signal needs to thank him because he brought attention to it. That is what the questions, and oh yes, and calling the Atlantic a terrible, a terrible rag paper. That was his response. And really that's kind of all we've gotten from the White House is doubling down that the Atlantic is not trustworthy, is deceitful, and there's been no accountability. We're getting, it's classified, not classified. We don't get straight answers of what's going on, who's responsible, and if they don't know yet, what is the plan to figure that out? And I think much like some of the congressional responses, we've got Mike Johnson saying, oh, it was a mistake. It won't happen again, right? People have learned their lesson. We're missing the accountability of what happened, what investigate. We don't hear anything from DOJ. Are they investigating or not? They should be. Is that actually going to happen? I think the White House is waiting for things to blow over. But everyone on that thread knew that what was going on. That is obviously not the first Signal thread they have. There's many other ones. If that's the Houthi subject line, you can imagine what the other subject lines are, right? And to Jeffrey's point, I mean, those are records that also American people should be aware of. Communications are supposed to be kept, right? So Hegseth faces a lawsuit starting today. He's been sued now for violating, records keeping. I will say, respect to any lawyer that's going up against the Trump administration. As you know, there's a number of EOs targeting specific law firms that are now barred from entering federal court, for example. So we're also trembling down on whether or not you can even bring litigation against the White House. To agree with Jeffrey's point, allies must be scared right now about what intelligence they've shared with the U.S. And, if this is a fun Friday, we can call, Les, you've called for heads to roll when intel has been leaked, right? We would have no cabinet right now. We would be missing half of our senior government if we actually call for the resignations that should be happening.
All right. Great stuff. I have a few things to say. I'm going to try to say them quickly. First of all, on the emoji front, my friends never put the American flag emoji next to the flame emoji. We don't do that. It is wrong. It implies you want to burn the American flag. I personally never do that. I make an effort not to do that. And that was happening in the chat. That shouldn't happen. I will make a more serious point, which is I understand why these folks were on Signal, because they need to react in real time with each other in a coherent way to the policy pronouncements of the president and the different moves he wants to make. It does highlight the fact that we have an issue here for our top policymakers being able to coordinate 24/7 the messages and the policy making around the world. The president is very active. He's making a lot of decisions. These folks do need to be in coordination with each other. And I'm a little bit sympathetic that they created a chat group to try to accommodate that. They didn't do it the right way, and there should be consequences for sure. But there needs to be a way for them to communicate without having to go to a skiff or go into hiding in a temporary room somewhere to be able to have these conversations with each other. So I just want to highlight that is a need, particularly in this administration, which is so active. There was also a fascinating policy debate between the various policymakers, particularly Vice President Vance, who really did not want to strike the Houthis thinking that this was letting Europe off the hook. The logic being that because most of the shipping traffic affected by the Houthis goes through the Suez Canal, which is critical for Europe trade, but not necessarily for the United States, that they should somehow be the ones taking action here. Of course, there are European countries involved in our coalition to fight the Houthis. So there's a little bit of a specious argument on that front. But the larger issue of this is not being in the U.S. national interest, I think, is something that should be debated. I think the vice president's totally wrong. And this is in the U.S. national interest. And actually, President Trump made the right decision to strike the Houthis. And kudos for those folks on the national security team who were supporting that decision. I think that was the right one. And then to your point, Jones, about heads should roll, that is possible. I just want to say one thing here. Mike Waltz, as the national security advisor, is a very good person. America needs him in that job. He is a very sensible person who I think produces better policy. And so while I think there should be consequences, I also think it's important that Waltz stay.
So if a head has to roll, Les, whose head is rolling?
Another head. Pete can should be another head.
But Pete is perfect for Fox News or some other thing. But he's just demonstrated he's not qualified for this job.
Well, to Les's point, though, when it comes to the substance of those messages, for the part, because there's more released today, but previously what was released, Hegseth did not add substantively to the conversation. His messages were about messages. Like, how do we sell this to the American people? That was the Secretary of Defense's main takeaway was, how do we sell this? Biden's fault in Iran. That was his additions to the conversation.
Yeah, you get to see policymaking and communication strategy in real time, folks. What a great lesson for us all. Yeah. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Kelly Crowley, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's special episode. It's not really a special episode, although it's a special issue. Join us on Friday, March 28th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast to get you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.